But Ryan Horvat, you're going to lead off with a guy who I think for sure will be an unsung fantasy playoff hero. And you heard it on the rejoiner there. He puts mayo in his coffee. Who is that?
Yeah, I got a 2-quarterback league, dynasty league, and unfortunately I had Trevor Lawrence and then I had Anthony Richardson, who I never really trust. So I'm going to look at Will Levis for the rest of the season. 4.7% rostered, and it makes sense because it's Will Levis, but he's actually finished, and I know I slander him every week, but he's finished among the top 20 fantasy quarterbacks the last 4 weeks, each of the last 4 weeks. 2 of those games he was in the top 10. Actually, I know the Titans aren't very good, and that helps to our favor here, right? They're usually trailing in these games. They never have a lead, and so Levis has had at least 200 passing yards in the last 4, and he goes against the Jags week 14 and week 17. So you get that Jags defense that doesn't know what they're doing playing man without the personnel twice, and then you get the Bengals week 15. Bengals could be a Super Bowl contender with that offense. The problem is their defense is brutal. So 2 weeks against the Jags, 1 against the Bengals. 2 of the 3 worst teams at preventing fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Levis has played only teams in the top 20 at preventing fantasy points to quarterbacks, so he's stepping down in class here to end the season. I like Will Levis quite a bit.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I think that's an excellent call. I have in a super flex and a 14-teamer. That same 14-teamer I have to win this week. So hopefully he's going to give me in the second season because he can really light up the scoreboard. And that defense being as horrendous as it is for the Titans right now, it's going to thrust him into some high-volume opportunities. And those are great situations for fantasy football players out there. All right, I am going to go with another unsung quarterback, and I'm going to go with Bryce Young of the Carolina Panthers. Everybody wrote him off. He was dropped en masse weeks ago. Some people, starting to come back and maybe picking him up, drinking from the well again. And you look at the schedule, it ain't too shabby. Now, this week upcoming, no way, at Philadelphia. I want nothing to do with them. But after that, Dallas at home, Arizona at home, and then Tampa Bay on the road. Dallas and Tampa Bay, those bookend matches, first round of the fantasy playoffs and the championship round, are delectable. Dallas has allowed the 4 most fantasy points to opposing passers. The Buccaneers allowed the most fantasy points to opposing passers this season. I know Young is number 25 in adjusted completion percentage over the last 5 weeks, but he's also number 10 in average at the target at 9.2. He's got Adam Thielen back. Xavier Legette has really started to come on strong here of late. And there's more RPO plays that have been designed in this Carolina offense for him, and he looks comfortable as a result because they ran a lot of that action at Alabama, and it's carried over nicely here down the stretch run. Again, a guy I'm going to target in redraft leagues next year in the very late rounds. This is my QB2. I'm going to super flex. I may go the extra buck. I kind of like Bryce Young. I can't believe I'm saying that. I've come back around on him. I think he's somebody that could definitely help you get over the top in your fantasy football playoffs this year. All right, give me another name. Who's going to be a fantasy playoff hero this year?
All right, so let's go with, the Jets absolutely stink, but I'm still a fan of Braylon Allen, and Breece Hall didn't practice, even coming out of the bye week. He's a little bit beat up right now. So let's go with Braylon Allen. You could still get him in 22% of leagues. The Jets actually have the best schedule for running backs the rest of the season. You get the Dolphins, you get that Jags defense, you get the Rams, and then you get the Buffalo Bills. So I like this spot. And I figure, like, for the Jets, you go youth movement here, right? I would bench Aaron Rodgers. Not that that's really going youth movement because Tyrod Taylor's your backup and he's probably not the future. But I would want to see kind of like what you have more in Braylon Allen than a beat-up Breece Hall, right? Because you're going to have to rebuild once again. So I like Braylon Allen a little bit the rest of the way here. 22% he's available in leagues. We'll roll with him.
I have him everywhere. I've been waiting all season long for him to get the opportunity. Who is uber talented. He can do it all. Bruiser of a running back, and I think the pride of Wisconsin. He's only 21 years old or 20. I don't think he can drink legally yet. Can maybe take you all the way to Titletown this season. I'm going to go with a proven veteran and a guy everybody knows and universally owned, and that's James Conner, the Terminator. I think it's going to pop off. I love his schedule rest of the season. This week at Seattle, 13th most fantasy points allowed to the running back position. And then New England, 9th most fantasy points allowed. And then after that, the Carolina Panthers, the most fantasy points allowed to running backs. And then finishes with the Rams in fantasy title games. in week 17. That's on the road, but the Rammies have given up the 11th most fantasy points to the running back position. Thank you, Barkley, Saquon. Look at Connor, number 11 in yak per attempt on the season. Numero trace in total missed tackles force among all NFL running backs with 54. Yards created per touch at number 6 as well, 4.43 in that category. He's averaging 5 yards per touch, and he's also contributing some meaningful receiving yardage, averaging 26.2 receiving yards per game. I think James Conner, rest of season, is going to be like a borderline 100 combined yards and maybe a touchdown almost every single week moving forward. He could be a difference maker and you winning a title in your fantasy leagues this season. All right, Horvat, give me another guy. And you're going with a fairly deep name, and I like this call.
Yeah, I like the Trey Tucker band here. Available 7% of leagues he's rostered in right now for the Raiders. Obviously, the Raiders are terrible. They're going to be underdogs in the majority of these games. They're going to be playing from behind. He caught that 58-yard touchdown pass on Black Friday against the Kansas City Chiefs. Week before that, he had 7 receptions for 82 yards. He's been under the radar the last couple weeks here, man. And then you look at the opposing schedule for the Raiders. You get the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You get Atlanta. You get Jacksonville, and then you get the Saints the next 4 weeks to close out the season, all among the worst 7 teams at preventing fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. You know, you worry like most of the targets go to Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers, but Tucker's been having some big games, and like I said, the Raiders probably going to be trailing in the majority of these games. So I kind of like him as a sneaky option if you got some injuries at that position, or some guys maybe that you just don't trust moving forward or you don't like their matchups.
Dude's got speed for days. Great call there. And another guy on a lousy team defensively, which means high volume. Yeah. And that is going to increase the prospects for him to score some fantasy points. Hey, we started with the Tennessee Titan in this segment. Let's end it with a Tennessee Titan. And Nick Westbrook-Akine, a guy that's been money in the bank and the definition of being a king of consistency, because all he does, he's a modern-day Chris Carter, is score touchdowns, right? He has scored a touchdown in all but one game in his last 7. And the fact that he is still, universally available in Yahoo leagues, I think his ownership is only like 28% is a clown show. People just turn a blind eye because he plays for Tennessee, and they're not looking at the hard data that's out there. The rest of the season schedule, we already talked about it with Levis. Jacksonville, 4th most fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. Cincinnati, 11th most allowed. At Indy, 17th most allowed. And then at Jacksonville, again, you get the Jags not once but twice. Unreal. Again, touchdown in 7 of his last 8 games. Since week 9, 14.4 ADOT, number 18 in yak per reception, averaging 20.5 yards per reception. It's seemingly good for like 10 to 14 fantasy points every week, and nobody gives a damn. I think you should give him a shot, plug him in your lineup, and he can maybe win you that hardware and those bragging rights in fantasy football this year.